Today, y'all, we're gonna get into a tiered maxi skirt. I love a tiered maxi skirt. It is an all temperature cheer kind of garment. If it's cold outside, you can throw on some leggings undercover. If it's warm outside, you can go bare-legged without showing off all of your goodies. And we're going to put all of the gathering tips I gave you last week to use this week. We're gonna put them to use to the maxi. I got jokes. Let's go. This video came about because a follower on Instagram, Jennifer Lucas, asked me if I could help her make a 3-tiered Navajo skirt. Now, I'm not going to get into the cultural history of it, but if you distill it down to look and technique, it is basically a 3-tiered gathered skirt with an elastic waist. And because I'm a mixed chick and I like to mix things up, I'm going to make it in some African wax print, also known as Dutch wax print, also known as let's everybody get together, right? And stop drawing all these lines in the sand. Let me get Mini-Me over here so we can demonstrate a few things. Come on, girl. You're so fancy. We're going to de-fancify her just so we can actually concentrate on the task at hand. You need 2 measurements for this skirt. Super simple. You need the widest part of your hips and you need your waist to floor measurement. That's it. My waist to floor is a 40. From my waist to floor, I'm going to add 2 inches for the fold over waistband and 3 inches for the hem. And my hip measurement, which is a 38, I'm going to add 2 inches for seam allowance. And we're going to cut up some rectangles. And the rectangles are going to sit tiered as such and look, well, probably pretty wackadoo in the fabric I got. Hey y'all, you know you folks out there keep saying that I don't use up my remnants? Well, here you go. I'm using up all of my remnants today. Thank you so much, Mini-Me. Thank you. Let's get your hat back on. I know you feel naked without it. Okay. Let's start with the top tier. The width is your hip measurement plus 2 inches for seam allowance. Each tier is just a rectangle of fabric cut on the grain, and each rectangle is double the width of the previous rectangle. The length of the top tier includes 2 inches for your waistband, and the length of your bottom tier will include 3 inches for hem allowance. When you add the length of all 3 tiers together, you should come up with your waist to floor measurement plus 5 inches for waistband, hem, and seam allowance. So my 3 tiers are 40 inches wide by 10 inches long, 80 inches wide by 17 inches long, and 160 inches wide by 19 inches long. Like I said, this skirt uses up a lot of fabric. It's very extra. And you're gonna cut 2 of each of these rectangles. We're going to sew each of these rectangles together at the side seams. There's no need for a fancy French seam here. We're just gonna sew them right sides together. I'm gonna go with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You could bump that up a little bit if you want. Again, this is not that deep of a garment. You're going to add 3 rows of gathering stitches to the top of the middle and the bottom tiers. Then we'll use those rows to gather each tier to match the width of the previous tier. Once these tiers are snugged up and matched to their appropriate partner, that's when the skirt becomes fashion, baby. We're going to mark our skirt pieces so that we have some notches that we can work with and match up later. You know I love them notches. Take your top tiers, and of course yours are going to be a lot bigger, fold them in half to mark the center point and just throw in a little snip within the seam allowance. Take your middle tiers, fold them in half, and give yourself a snip on both the top and bottom center points of the middle tier. Then fold the bottom tier in half and snip just the top of the tier. These notches are going to help us. This notch will match to the middle tier. This notch will match to the bottom tier. You could also mark these in pen if your fabric is prone to praying. Did I just actually say that? You could also mark these in pen if your fabric is prone to fraying. Marcy has had not enough coffee today. Cannot speak English, she does. Sew each separate tier together on the lengthwise edges at your chosen seam allowance and neaten the edge of each seam allowance with a zigzag or an overlock stitch. Now that our tier is sewn, we add our gathering stitches to the top. I'm using contrasting thread for my bobbin and needle. Working from the right side of your fabric, stitch these 3 rows on both sides of your tier, stopping and starting at each side seam. Do not backstitch at the beginning and end of your gathering rows. Leave long thread tails on each row. You only have to do these gathering stitches on the top of your second tier and on the top of your bottom tier. Okay, here are my top and middle tiers ready to go. She's looking kind of like a wax print creature right now with these 2 eyes. I often put eyes in places that they aren't best suited for, but not today. Today they're going on my, they're going on my uterus. So I guess I will have giant pink eyes on my uterus. Hey, I got a uterus. Some of you do too. Why not highlight it? You can see my gathering stitches here on my middle tier. My thread color is this beautiful neon coral pinky hue, and my bobbin color is white. Oh, do you want to know why I used contrasting thread color? I guess you didn't watch my gathering tips video last week where Rob helped me out. Maybe you should watch that after you're finished watching this, okay? Just getting my pins ready, just my pins here. It's a brand new fresh box of pins. These are fantastic. Let me YouTube hand that for you. Oh yeah, baby. We're gonna take this middle tier and we're gonna turn it wrong sides out. So you can see, here's our side seam, here's our bobbin thread, and here's our other side seam. We've got our long thread tails on either side seam where we broke our stitching. Now we're going to take our top tier and turn it right side out. And we're gonna find the notched edge right here, and we're going to sandwich it within the middle tier, matching up those little notches that we cut for ourselves, right? That's why I love them notches. Them notches wanna help you. And I'm gonna throw a double crossed pin in at that notch point. Then we're going to shimmy on down to the side seam of both these panels, and we're going to match those up. Arrange it so that all those loose thread tails of your gathering stitches are out of the way and separated to either side. This is a bit of an exercise in patience, but patience is a virtue and patience is good to have. So relaxing. So much better than, say, doing the dishes or raking leaves or cooking. The middle tier has to be cinched up and gathered to match the circumference of the top tier, and that's where our gathering stitches are going to help us. I'm going to leave aside the neon thread and start with just the bobbin thread, pulling all 3 threads evenly and at the same time until you've matched the length of your top tier. Now I'm going to take those bobbin threads and I'm going to take my needle threads from the 3 rows that I just pulled, and I'm going to figure 8 them around one of these pins to lock the stitches. Again, if you saw our video last week, you'll know why we're doing that. I'm gonna link it below for you because I'm a giver. When you're done with your figure 8, you can push your pin down to lock that in. Repeat this process for all of your thread sections. There's a lot of thread to deal with, but sewing really affords you an amount of patience that you might not have otherwise. Rob might disagree with me on that because he's seen me cook, but in this case, Rob is wrong. I'm a very patient person when it comes to sewing. Final section. Oh my God, we're doing so well, you guys. You're doing so well. You're such a patient person. Did you know that you were this patient of a person? Can you go to your partner or your cat or your chair today and say, hey, give me a pat on the back. I'm a patient person. It's something I just found out today. And you know who gave me that gift? Marcy of the Handmade Harriells gave me that gift. She's a giver, that Marcy. Both tiers match. What we do now is arrange these gathers along this edge so that they're evenly spaced, okay? And that requires a bit more patience, but we've already learned you got patience. Now listen, I know some of you out there are thinking, Marcy, why aren't you doing this with, say, zigzagging over twine or yarn or dental floss? Well, if you're thinking that, then you didn't see last week's video on gathering tips and why I don't like to raid the bathroom cabinet in order to gather fabric. But you do you. If that works for you, you do you. There she is, all gathered up and ready to stitch together. We're gonna go ahead and stitch all the way around with the gathered side of the fabric facing up so we can see if our gathers are spaced evenly and adjust them as we go if we need to. Now listen, I can also hear you saying, Marcy, why aren't you using a gathering foot to do all the work for you? Well, I could, but you know what? Not everybody out there in YouTube land has a fancy dancing machine that has a gathering foot and can do your dishes. Not everybody has that. I want to show you a way to do this with a plain and simple machine, which is what I'm stitching on. And I'm gonna link the machine that I'm stitching on below because it's a favorite of mine. Let's sew. We're gonna start sewing at a side seam. Remove one of your pins and loosen up those thread tails. Then stitch right between two of your rows of gathering stitches. We're lock stitching at the beginning and ends of our seam, and we're undoing our thread tails as we stitch. Okay, here we go. The first tier is attached to the middle tier. Now we got to remove all these gathering stitches because we don't need them anymore. They've done their service. Put that patience to work and remove those gathering stitches. Now let's pause here for reflection. Look at all this thread here. Look at all this thread that we've removed. Were that dental floss, that would be a whole lot of dollars you just wasted. Thread comes like, I don't know, 300 meters to a spool for like $3.99 when it's on sale. The floss I buy costs like, I don't know, $7 for a little thing, and it seems to run out once a week, so I'm not wasting my dental floss on this. Once all of these gathering stitches are removed, we're going to neaten our seam allowance just as we did with our side seams with a zigzag stitch or an overlock stitch. And here's a little tip for you. We could either press the seam allowance towards the top tier of the skirt or down towards the middle tier of the skirt. And whichever way you press your seam allowance, that's where there's going to be more fullness. And I want my fullness sitting down, dropping down with gravity. So I'm going to take this seam allowance into the middle tier. And although I'm moving my iron back and forth, I'm actually not letting it lay down on the fabric. It's hovering over the seam. To attach the bottom tier, which is even more fabric than the middle tier, you're going to do the exact same steps that we just did for these two tiers. But first, before she becomes Godzilla size, let's tackle this waistband. We're going to press along the top edge of our top tier under a 1/4 inch. I've got got some flat elastic here, and this is what I'm using for my waistband because this is just going to be an elasticated gathered waist on this gathered tiered skirt. I'm going to press under again, just a little bit bigger than that elastic. We're going to stitch right along the fold that we created on our first press and just catch that, and that's going to create our channel. And I'm going to leave a 2-inch wide opening. So to remind myself to do that, I'm going to take a pin and throw it lengthwise in the middle of the waistband. So I know that when I reach the head and the tail of this pin, leave that section open so you have room to actually insert your elastic. And that's our fold over waistband ready for insertion. Just gonna throw that safety pin into one end of the elastic and just tuck it right in that little hole. And you're just gonna use the safety pin to nudge that elastic along through the channel. This skirt is all about a little patience. It's an easy skirt, but it takes some patience. As you're inserting your elastic, make sure the other end of your elastic doesn't go merrily swimming into the hole along with its buddy. I'm just going to throw another safety pin right here. Now we've got both ends of the elastic out through the opening. Going to pin it up so that we don't lose it in that channel. And you can see the waistband is starting to gather on itself. Now we can try this on and see where we need to sew our waistline up at. Come on over with me to the mirror. She's looking very floofy, and by floofy I mean amazing. Since we left ourselves some insurance on our waistband, we can now pull the elastic until it suits us. Let's finish this baby up. Okay, home stretch. Mark where we fitted the waistband with the safety pin on both sides of the elastic. Remove the safety pin, then overlap those marks until they meet up exactly. Now we simply zigzag stitch right over that line we marked. I'm going to back stitch a bunch because I don't want my waistband coming undone on me. Trim away that excess elastic. And now we're going to edge stitch right along that fold, being sure we don't catch the elastic in our waistband. I like to throw a few pins in right on the fold, feeling to be sure that I'm not catching the elastic. Then it's just a super simple process of sewing that 2 inches closed at the machine. Backstitch at the beginning and end of this little opening to secure your waistband. And Magic of YouTube, the waistband is enclosed. And Magic of YouTube, the third tier is attached. Listen, I'm not shortchanging you guys. This actually is the exact same process as the previous tier. This is just a lot of fabric, and I'm trying to keep my sanity intact, so you understand. Just do the exact same process for the third tier. Now all that's left is to hem it. We're gonna do the exact same process as we did on the waistband. Bonus! You don't need to let the hem drop overnight. No, you do not, because this is not cut on the bias. As you can see, this is my selvage edge. This skirt is just 3 rectangles cut on the straight grain. So there's no bias that needs to drop overnight before you hem it. You're simply going to fold it under a 1/2 inch, press it, and then you're going to fold it under again. I'm going to go with about a 3-inch hem on this. I'm going to press it again at 3 inches, and then I'm going to edge stitch all the way along the fold of that hemline. Now, I know my digits. I know that this hem allowance is going to work for me, but you should go ahead and try yours on and pin it up where you want it to land before you do this next step, just so you make sure you've got the length or the shortness that you want. I'm going to finish this and meet you back here for the reveal. Like I said, it is a lot of skirt. Rob is never going to believe how patiently I gathered all of this fabric. Hello.
Hello.
What are you doing under there?
I'm just seeing how patient you really are. Marcy asked me to wear the colors, so I wore all the colors.
Well, maybe I asked you to wear it because you were getting lucky under there. Waka waka!
Waka waka.
If you think back to last week's gathering video...
No, that was my favorite.
Yeah, would you say that I did a good job?
I think you did a fantastic job.
Oh, thank you!
Yeah. Fish for that compliment.
Got it! I feel like you need to now take me somewhere in this skirt because I'm all dressed up and know where to go. Where are we going?
Where do you want me to take you?
Somewhere.
How about a hot tub?
Ooh, well, that's lovely, but not so much somewhere the skirt can go.
So maybe the skirt doesn't go.
Oh, maybe it doesn't. Peace out, everybody.
Emphasis on hot tub.
He got some ideas while he was under there, I think.